Well, hey there, everybody. On today's episode, I'm going to be taking a look at this. It's a Panasonic monitor with a built-in VHS player. This thing looks awesome. I found it at eWaste, and we're going to take a look at it now on the Retro Hack Shack After Hours. All right, well, I am excited for what I found at eWaste this week. This is, after all, another episode of eWaste Wednesday. So welcome to that. As you know, Wednesday is the day that I go to eWaste, and I find some crazy deals on some really good old electronics, mostly computers, but sometimes TVs and things like that. And this is one of those days. I found this Panasonic monitor. I'm getting in the way of the light. Sorry, folks. And of course, at the end of the video, I will tell you what I paid for this little gem right here after we take a look and see if it's even working. Certainly, we need to clean this up. But anyway, what I found was this Panasonic AG-500R video monitor and VHS player. So it does dual duty. It is not a TV, however. It is a monitor only and a VHS player. That is kind of interesting in and of itself, but also just look at this. I mean, I'm used to those TVs that were around in the early 2000s, maybe late 90s, that had those built-in VHS players kind of in the bottom of them. I don't know if you remember. I think I had one of those. But this is something quite different. This is something that would have been used in the commercial space, I believe. Just taking a look at these buttons, the colors on the buttons, the styling of this thing, it is certainly heavy and bulky. So I think this would have been used probably in a library or a classroom or a TV station. Like maybe you would use this to watch dailies on. I can see that happening. And it also reminds me of something that may have been used even like in a hospital setting or something. It's definitely meant for commercial use, not average thing that you might go down to CompUSA or whatever and buy at the time that this came out. But let's take a quick look first at what's available here in terms of the unit, and then we'll turn it on and see if it works. Who knows? Something that's commercial grade might be inclined to last a little bit longer than something that was made for, typical retail use. So starting at the bottom here, this is the power switch, nice clunky switch, very nice, and a headphone jack. And I believe that is one of the smaller headphone jacks. It does have a little panel here that seems to be stuck, so we'll have to see if I can get that open, but that's no doubt going to be where there's going to be some controls in here. There is a little thing under here. You probably can't see it on the camera that it says push open. And when I push it, it does nothing. So we'll have to see if we can get that working. As I said, this is a player, not a recorder. That was implied in that statement earlier. And if we go over the buttons on the front here, we have what looks like a tape inserted kind of signal here. Looks like there was a remote that went to this. I do not have the remote. Eject button, reset, and memory button here. There's a reverse, fast forward, play, and stop, of course. There's a still button and a slow button. And then we have volume down here at the bottom. We have a slow tracking fix and then like a regular tracking fix. So you can really tune in the tracking on this thing. Again, professional features that at this time I don't believe may have been around on some VCRs, but the fact that you have a slow and a regular tracking, again, screams professional to me. Well, this thing is heavy. Looking at the back here, of course, we have the brand name Panasonic, 120 volts, 60 hertz. So this was definitely made for North American users here, or to be sold in North America. So over here we have the date, April 1988. So this would have been about the time that the darker phosphor would have been coming out, which actually really improves the picture quality, in my opinion. I think Sony Trinitrons around this time. If we go back and look at my pink TV set that I sometimes use on the channel, you'll see it has a darker phosphor, but I'll show you an example of that in just a minute when I turn this back around. And then over here, we've got an auto repeat function, and you can set this for tape end, off, or video end. So I'm not sure how it detects the end of the video. Maybe if you recorded, just like 20 minutes on a tape or something like that, it could somehow detect that there was no more video signal on the tape and it would repeat at that point. So again, another interesting feature. Maybe this was meant to be used in some place where you would have a looping video running nonstop. In the back here, we have video in and out and audio in and out. No stereo on this particular set, just mono, but it does have both in and out RCA for composite input and audio input and output. And then over here, we have some more fine-tuning adjustments. It looks like there's focus, screen, vertical size, horizontal hold, and service normal, I think it says down here on this one. That's pretty interesting. So it just so happens I have a Commodore 1702 set up there in the back, and this will give you a good example of what the different phosphors looks like on the CRTs, as I was mentioning before. So the 1702 has an earlier phosphor, or a lighter colored phosphor, which was common on CRTs before this time period, and then you can see the difference in the Panasonic, where the Panasonic has more of a darker phosphor there. And that allows for better contrast in the tube. And it also has this plastic covering here, which also might be doing some blocking as well to help with contrast and things. So this TV is quite dirty, but it's in great shape, actually. I mean, there are some scratches and things like that, some scuffs, and it's dirty and dusty on top, but really overall, this thing is in really nice condition. The only thing I would say is that for this back part here, it does have some yellowing, as is typical. If we raise up the handle here and look around behind, you'll see the color difference. So this is probably more like the original color, and then the rest of it is, you know, not only just dirty, but also yellowed a little bit. Not an incredible amount, like maybe when we get done cleaning, it'll look, I think, passable, but you can just see the difference there in the original color versus the yellowed color, which is probably just due to the nature of the plastic, but in some cases it can be due to, you know, being in a smoke-filled environment for long periods of time. I will say though, if we do a sniff test, yeah, I don't smell any cigarette smoke actually, you know, embedded in this particular set. All right, well, the only thing to do now is to go ahead and turn it on and see if this thing is working. I've gone ahead and hooked it up. You can see in the back there, my brand new, newly built Commodore SX64 Micro that I built out of another TV that I found at eWaste. You can find that video over on my main channel if you haven't seen it yet. Anyway, I built in some outputs on the back of it. So even though I still have the keyboard attached to the front of the screen here, I've got it connected to the outputs in the back, and I'm feeding that into the inputs on this monitor. So when we turn it on, hopefully we'll see a picture here on the screen. So without further ado, let's go ahead and try it out. I'm excited to see if this thing's going to work. Oh, I've got high voltage. I've got a counter. Oh, this is looking pretty good here, folks. Let's see. Come on, warm up. Warm up. Yep, there we go. There we go. But yeah, this looks actually really, really good, even better than the 1702, probably in part because quality of the CRT is probably good, and also that phosphor that I mentioned, that darker phosphor on the front of the screen, is making this one a lot easier to read actually than even the 1702. So yeah, this is looking fantastic from a picture quality. This would actually be a great monitor to use for gaming or whatever, actually. So I'm really digging that, but got to figure out why the volume's not working. And now we also need to test the VCR in here that's built in for the VHS playback. So let me go grab a tape. We'll stick it in and we'll see if that works. Well, that's a problem. I put a tape in to see if it would work, and it went in, but it did not come out. And it had the play button illuminated, the play light here illuminated for a little bit. It seemed like it was winding things around the heads, and then it just stopped and turned off. So there's obviously a sensor in there that detects when the tape is in there. It's turned off the input or changed the input over to the VCR, but now I don't have there's no input from the back. So I just have an empty screen, but I can hear, you know, they still have volume, there's still high voltage. So it's switched inputs, but it's not playing the tape. The tape is dead. So looks like we're going to have to do a little bit of repair. All right, I've got the back off, and you know what that means? It's warning time. If you have not worked in CRTs, please don't do it you could really give yourself a nasty shock. I wouldn't want to see any of my viewers getting hurt because they were trying to do something without knowing what they're doing. Especially this area here around the CRT is going to be particularly dangerous. So yeah, just get some help. If you've never done this before, don't use this video as an excuse to start working on CRTs. They can be dangerous, so just be careful. Anyway, now that we're inside, we can have kind of a closer look. It does look like the tube has, you know, a pretty good layer of dust on it there. So yeah, this thing has definitely seen some use, but as we saw, the picture quality was absolutely fantastic for this thing. No adjustments needed. It does have a Matsushita tube in here, which is not surprising because it's Panasonic, which is also known as Matsushita. And the board for the monitor here is, you know, pretty run-of-the-mill standard stuff in there. Since there's no TV tuner or anything to worry about, that simplifies things quite a bit and allows for the smaller board here to sit just underneath this CRT. Then, of course, on this side, what they have done is literally taking a VCR and turned it vertical and stuck it in there. So that's all that is. All of this whole area here with the shielding and this plastic pieces and stuff like that is basically just a VCR turned on its side. Hopefully a high quality one if we can get it working. Now, if I spin this around a little bit, you can see here is the tape, and it is definitely in there. And it's a little bit hard to see from this angle, but I think it may have tried to start spooling around the heads. I'll take a look at that in a minute. I may have to remove some of this shielding and stuff. But one of the things I read online with this particular set is that the carriage over time gets a little bit warped and gets stuck. And so that can lead to this particular condition. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the camera off and start removing some of this mechanism here and see if I can, number one, get the tape out that I was trying to test with, and number two, see if the sled is binding on anything, or maybe it just needs to be a little bit of grease or lubricant added here or there. So let me go ahead and break into this thing and see what's going on. All right, well, with the help of this extra long screwdriver, I was able to remove 4 screws at the corners of the VCR unit here. And after untying these cables with their little cable ties, everything is nice and neat, by the way. This thing is obviously meant to be serviced or sent back for service or serviced in the field. But anyway, with those screws removed, I should be able to now swing out the VCR component. Yeah, here it comes. And nice. There's enough room in the cables to do that. So that makes it a lot easier to work on. But right now, my sugar is critically low. So I'm going to go inside and get something to eat and probably leave this for the night and come back and work on it in the morning. All right, so I've got the shields off of this thing now. And yeah, by the way, if you're taking one of these apart, maybe make a diagram for where all the screws go. Some of the screws are color-coded, but there are a lot of them. So I've got a little pile or several piles going of like screws so that I can hopefully get them all back in the same spot. But anyway, there was a big shield over this. I took that off, and it allowed me to get in here and take a look at some of the things like the belt, which is a little loose, but I think it will still work. May have to replace that in the final tally when all is said and done, but it's a little loose, but not much. And it's not breaking apart or anything. You know, perhaps there's a way to increase the tension on that just a little bit. I'm also looking at some of the screws and gears and things like that. This one has a lot of grease on it. Maybe that grease is dried out and is causing a little bit more friction than it normally would. So that's something I'm going to be taking a look at. But yeah, as far as the gears themselves, the teeth and things like that, from what I can tell, everything in here is actually in good shape as of now. Okay, now I've just flipped this thing 180 degrees so we can see the other side where the tape mechanism and the tape that's stuck in here. And it looks like it did start to, anyway, pull this thing around the head. And what I'm wondering is if it got to a certain point, maybe the head is stuck. No, the head's free spinning. I'm kind of wondering if maybe there's a gear in here or something, or maybe a tape sensor. Tape insert sensor, maybe a few of them. Maybe one tape insert sensor is working, and that's why when I put the tape in, it cut off the input in the back, the composite input, but maybe the other tape insert sensor isn't working. Maybe there's just some dust over some sensors. Lots of those little things can go wrong with these VCRs. And so, yeah, I'm going to be taking the tape out and also watching where the tape mechanism goes, because if the tape mechanism gets stuck at some point, that could also cause this condition where, you hear the screen powering on, but the VCR doesn't power on if it thinks the tape is stuck. All in all, I'm hoping it's a lubrication or some other simple issue like that. Maybe, taking a look at the track here and putting some grease on it. I don't know. I'm going to take a little closer look and see what I can find. Okay, so when working on VCRs like this and you get a tape stuck or anything like this, it's important to know that everything's basically driven by gears and belts and things. And what you don't want to do is force anything, if you can help it anyway, out of the VCR. So I've already found the mechanism on the back, those gears that I was showing you before with that big belt. I was able to maneuver those just with my finger, just moving those gears by hand, and that retracted the tape from the head mechanism. So it unloaded the tape from the head. And then what I did was I looked around to see if I could find the gear mechanism that actually actuates the tape eject and insert. And it's actually right here. And so what I'm going to do is, hopefully I can keep out of the way when I do this, but you can there's a gear that's moving here as I rotate this by hand. And what should happen is, if I'm doing this the right way, yep, there it goes. The tape should come up. You can see the tape's moving up now just by physically rotating this shaft here that's attached to this motor. And it's opening the door. With any luck, we should have, there we go, here it comes. There's the tape, yay. There's a little crinkle here in the tape, but we'll just tighten that up and we're good to go. Now I can actually try to do some test runs with this loading mechanism and see if there's something in the way, or maybe something's not traveling far enough, or a sensor isn't registering. Well, I'm going to go in handheld mode here for a little bit, so sorry for the jostling, but yeah, basically ever since that tape got stuck, and I've been working on this for a good 2 days now, I have not been able to get any power to the unit. The counter here does not come on at all. It's almost like there was a fuse blown. And this is so frustrating when you have these problems and you're going around and around. The first thing I did when I came in here, and several of the things that I found online and the service manual, etc., all said to check the fuses, the 2 fuses on this board down here. And there's a fuse here and there's a fuse in the back there, which you probably can't see. There's 2 of them. And they're like, hey, if any of those fuses blow, this unit is not going to work. Well, those fuses were fine, so that was not a problem. And I even looked with my phone, with my flashlight and stuff. I looked all around this unit here to see if there were any fuses. Well, in the process of trying to recalibrate and reset all of the gears and things, I ended up going ahead and taking these boards here, which are normally attached all the way up at the top here, closed. I took those off so that I could reach in here, if I can show you, this mechanism here, which is on a belt, because I wanted to check and see if that belt was intact, and it is. And anyway, I got everything reset so that it should appear just like the tape was in the unload position, because my fear was, there's a little mode switch down here, and my fear was that for some reason the mode switch was maybe in between a couple of switch positions, and maybe that was causing the power not to come on. Well, in the process of taking these boards off and doing all of that, I just happened to notice this. 2 more fuses sitting right over here. And yep, that one that's gone there is one that was blown. Oh, so frustrating. There was no way for me to see those fuses when these boards were in here, because they're right behind this little piece of plastic and there was wires in the way and I just could not see them. So that was a very frustrating 2 days worth of work, let me tell you. But I've got a new fuse. I'm going to pop it in there. We'll spin this thing up. And my hope is that this thing will come to life and hopefully get everything in the right position and we can try again. Obviously, what's happened here is that probably some old grease and things were, on the gears and shafts. And when the VCR or VCP, I guess it's really just a player, in this case, tried to load the tape, those old grease and stuff caused a strain on the motor. It blew the fuse, and that's what the problem is. So I'm going to put a new fuse in there. By the way, hardware stores, modern hardware stores don't stock 1.2 amp fuses, but luckily I was able to get some from Amazon next day delivery, and they're here. So I'm going to put this in, and hopefully this thing will, after a few times, maybe going through the motions of loading and unloading a tape, will be good enough to play. And then I can go in, and once I've confirmed that it's working, I can lubricate all of these gears over on this side. You can see some of them have a lot of old grease and stuff on them. And by lubricating and cleaning everything in here, hopefully this thing will work, and not only work, but last for years to come. Okay, the fuse is in. The set is on the front. I'm just going to go ahead and plug in the power here to my outlet strip. Here we go. I heard the high voltage come on. I have a counter. So, let's hope this thing works. I think I can run it like this. I still have these boards kind of fanned out here a little bit, but all the wires are plugged in. Let's see if it'll actually go in. Yep. Okay. It's going. It's loading. It's playing. It's playing. It's playing. It's playing. Oh, nice. The tracking is off, but... Oh, wait. I've got to show you guys this. It looks good. Let's test this thing out here. Let's do a rewind. I went ahead and stopped it. Yeah. Looking good. Fast forward just for fun. Okay, fast. Doesn't like fast forward. Fast forward is not working for some reason. Okay, looks like one other little thing to troubleshoot and should be good here. They were not kind. They did not rewind. Shame, shame. All right, well, I've got this thing back together. I did go through and check all the grease and lube where needed and do other cleaning inside the chassis. Also, while I had this all open, I went ahead and took time to clean the heads on the machine. If you've never done that before, the process is pretty simple. Once it's all open, you can just spin the head with your finger, making sure the power's off so you're not running anything. You can spin the head with your finger and use a piece of paper like this. Clean white piece of paper with just a little spray of IPA. I used 91% IPA on this. And actually you can see here that the head was indeed pretty dirty. I went through 3 times, doing this 3 times where this was the first time down here. You can see that's pretty dirty. And then I did it a second time and it was still pretty dirty. And then by the time I got to the 3rd time, you know, spinning it about, I don't know, 10 or 20 times each time through here, with the wet IPA-soaked paper, you can see I was getting down to, you know, almost nothing there. So that process works really well. Of course, if you have a complicated machine like this and you don't have it apart like I did, you can always use one of those little cleaning tapes. But I think this way actually works a lot better if you have simple access to those heads. Okay, well, I don't have this set buttoned up just yet, and that is because I want to go through and do a thorough clean. And I'm going to use my normal procedure that I do for any CRT when I'm going through and cleaning it, and that is to take the back actually off all the way. Here it is down here. And this way I can actually scrub these vents up here. I can put it through the, under the, you know, in the sink and run water over it. And there's just a few minor things on here. It's actually in really good shape apart from the slight discoloration, which I won't be able to fix without really immersing this whole thing in a retro bright procedure, which in this case is not worth it. You can see there's just like some little scuffs and things up here. And I can pretty easily get rid of those, I think, with just a little elbow grease. So I'm going to go over this whole thing, get out my toothbrush, go through all these vents, and then we'll come back and check out what it looks like and take a look at one last special tape once this is all done. I'll be right back. All right, and there it is, all clean and ready to go. This thing was in great shape already when I got it, but there were some few really deep black marks where somebody had probably set something on top. There was a scratch in here on the top of the case. I was able to get all of that out, clean up all of the grill holes here, cleaned up even the inside of the cabinet where that dark gunk had built up from the CRT over time. cleaned up the buttons, basically did the whole thing from top to bottom, and wasn't really worth a cleaning montage, but it is done. It looks fantastic. This thing is really now in mint condition, and it, most importantly, is working. All right, so now that I trust this thing is working, I am going to play in just a second this very special tape that I picked up out of a box of tapes where I also got these Blockbuster tapes. Somebody had dropped these off at like one of those secondhand DVD tape stores and things. They had dropped these off in a box. They were completely free, and I could not help for the nostalgia to pick up just a couple of the boxes, right? This brings back so much memory for me watching videos in the 90s. Anyway, this other one is the unofficial Star Trek comedy videotape, and I believe this is the one that was bootlegged around, not quite as much as the Star Trek Christmas special maybe, but this was definitely making the rounds when I was a kid, and this was in the box as well. So I'm going to try this tape out for the first time. I've been waiting for a project to do it, and I think this is the perfect one to actually test this out. Hopefully it was recorded in the slow play mode, because this does not support extended play. It only supports 2-hour tapes, basically. But first, you're probably wondering, as I do in most of the E-Waste Wednesday episodes, how much this thing costs. Well, I picked it up at E-Waste for a grand total of $10. That's right, $10 for this beauty. It was ready to be racked and sent out to be scrapped. I was able to save it, and now I'm able to pass it on to somebody else. And I say that because this particular set, I looked it up, and it actually fetches quite a pretty penny, even on eBay. The ones that have sold recently have sold between, $500 and $750, something like that. This is a highly collectible set, in part because of its unique and industrial design. And this is the only, besides the really professional decks, I've seen some of those in studios, but besides those, as far as something that you could buy or access yourself by walking into a library or something like that, this is the only combination VCR, or VCP really, because it doesn't record anything, and CRT that I have ever found that has a vertical cartridge slot. This is the only one, and I did some research online. I cannot find any other examples of a combination TV and VCP, we'll call it for now, VHS player that has this vertical slot. So it is quite unique. If you know of any other examples of a combo unit like this that has a vertical slot, let me know in the comments below. But now I've got my focus locked, so probably things have been going in and out of focus here. I have my focus locked on this thing so we can put in this Star Trek tape and just take a quick look at what this thing looks like now that it's up and running. And here's a look at what's on this tape. This is the back of it here. You can see there's a couple of SNL skits and some Tom Snyder interviews, as well as some outtakes from Star Trek 3, some biographies. There's some behind the scenes of Star Trek 4 and the 20th anniversary cast party. Here we go, the Star Trek comedy videotape. Let's see what it looks like.
The following program is brought to you in living color on NBC. Final frontier.
All right, I don't want to get a copy match. This looks like it's just the intro to the program. Whoops. What was that?
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
Even this is kind of a blooper reel of the opening.
Stardate. Captain, are you all right? You sound tired. Acknowledge, Captain. Is everything all right? Okay.
All right, so there you go. Whoa, I don't know what's going on there, but so number one, this is a interesting tape to watch. Number two, this thing is completely working and is playing this great. It actually looks really, really good. This is a very high quality CRT and is still working very well. I mean, obviously the tape itself is a copy of stuff from the 60s, so it's going to have all kinds of artifacts and stuff like that on it. But yeah, this is really, really good quality player. The only thing that's still a little bit wrong with it is one of the gears seems to be knocking just a little bit. I can kind of hear it if I turn the volume all the way down. If the volume's up, then I don't hear it. But with the volume all the way down and listening to it, there's just a little bit of a knock on one of the gears. Maybe one of the tines is worn or something. There's just a little bit of a knock. Other than that, this thing works great. So I will be putting this up for sale on my eBay store. It's super heavy, so a local pickup is going to be preferred. I can meet someone somewhere, but yeah, to ship this thing, I will do it if people want to pay the shipping cost, but the shipping cost is going to be pretty high because I'm going to have to double pack it. So anyway, I'm going to put this on the eBay store. So if somebody wants it, super unique set here, and somebody is really going to love this if they are a collector of CRTs, because I have never seen one like this before from 1988. I did want to point out that the problem I was having with rewinding and fast forwarding a tape earlier was actually in the tape itself. I went ahead and pressed that little button on the bottom of VHS tapes where you can unlock the gears on the inside that wind the tape up, and I couldn't really even move it with my hand. So it wasn't a weak motor or anything like that. It was just the tape was actually binding up, which can happen as tapes sit around. So yeah, it wasn't anything with the player. It was actually just the automatic stop mechanism was kicking in because that tape was just really, really hard to turn mechanically.
Are you saying then that we should pay more attention to the movies? No, that's not what I'm saying at all. Hey, you guys are the lamest bunch. I mean, I've never seen. I can't believe these people. I mean, I really can't understand what they're doing.
That was William Shatner, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to remind you, Trekkers, that we have some fine.
Yeah, so obviously this was, taped. This is a total bootleg, just filled with Star Trek stuff. This was the SNL episode where Shatner came on and was like reaming out the fans, and then he comes back up and apologizes later. Classic, very classic episode. I loved this one when I was a kid. Also, there's no high speed mode with this thing, so you're stuck at kind of a slow. If you remember early VHS players, they were pretty slow at rewinding, and a lot of people bought those dedicated rewinders that you could stick a tape in. It would rewind it really fast and not lock up your VCR while you were doing that. So yeah, this thing's pretty slow to rewind. It does take quite a while. Yeah, so I don't know, some sort of James Bond thing going on here, some sort of James Bond music with some outtakes, I guess. It's pretty funny. This thing looks pretty good so far.
Science fiction is considered anti-religious, or has been, but with the continual repeating of the shows over and over again, we have picked up an audience all through the country that is diversified, that is not simply children, that is not simply college students, it is really the entire scope of this country.
What you're really saying, Walter, is that when a local station has that program in its vault, it can schedule it at the time it feels it will reach the most responsive audience to it, instead of simply taking it down the line from the television network when the gods of power in New York decide it's going to be on.
Right, but it's also, when Walter talks about the Bible Belt, just about every Star Trek show was a great morality play. Also, there was.
All right, so that's going to do it for this edition of Retro Hat Trick After. If you want to see more videos of me fixing up things, working on CRTs, etc., make sure you're subscribed or join my Patreon page. I really appreciate it. And I will put a link to a video that I think you will enjoy coming up right over here, or over here, or over here, somewhere along in there. And please click on that one, and I'll see you there in the next one.
End of line.